Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, the Bitcoin price chart has broken below the 2018 all-time high, or barely just poked itself below it at this point. We're currently sitting just below it right now. I said I would be taking today off. It's Father's Day weekend. My wife went off to the gym this morning. I have an hour to crank out, edit, and talk about this really quick, and then I got to get going. But the Bitcoin price still continues to find no support anywhere. And I think the bigger concern of it is that you're just not seeing any type of monster volume coming in yet. Usually when a capitulation is coming to an end or looking for some type of reversal, you'll see some type of buy volume reversal coming in. We can look over here on Bitcoin, and this is on Coinbase, and we can just see there's really just not a substantial amount of volume here for the last few days. It's just been kind of petering out, and that we're certainly not seeing buyers coming in yet. We've looked at several different crashing structures that Bitcoin has been doing in here. We can see that even if we kind of took like the capitulation phase from back in 2014, we could see that we've dipped. This is a bigger move. Looking back to the 2018 fractal that Bitcoin was following for 6 months, started deviating away from in here. However, did hit the 200-day moving average as it did back in 2018. We could see, hey, still chugging along in here. If this is still the continuing structure of what's happening here for Bitcoin, well, it's playing out like the ending phase of a crashing market. And well, the bottom end there's at around 14,000. I got to tell you, though, I'm not so convinced on really picking out a bottom still to this point and feeling very convinced about that either. The reality is this is all happening so dramatically fast with no signs of relief. And we can even look back to previous bear markets for Bitcoin coming off the highs. That every time you get some big move like in that, you're going to get usually some type of bounces along the way, which we're not seeing tremendously. And usually when you're down 70%, you're going to see some type of relief bounce come out of here. We're now at 72% for Bitcoin. We can go back to 2014. In all these cases, you get down 70%, you end up seeing some type of relief bounce coming out of here. So in both cases, we talked about this week, you got 100% bounce coming out of there. There's just no sign of any bounce coming at this point. And there's no incredibly high buy volume coming out right now. Yesterday, while Bitcoin was still holding its all-time highs, Barry Silbert came out and said, feels like we've hit max pain and uncertainty in the crypto market. We're buying Bitcoin here. Let's go. And usually whales don't tell you they're buying when they're buying. They'll usually accumulate things first. So that struck me as quite odd when he did that. You don't usually say, hey guys, we're going to buy here. We're whales. So there still are no signs of relief in here. At this point, with how deep we are at 73% for Bitcoin, we can start looking at it and saying, all right, well, how deep have the previous bear markets gone? And for Bitcoin, the previous bear markets have gone down about 85%. That gets you down there into about $10,000 if we go full regular depth of what previous bear markets have been. I have presented the case of Bitcoin going as low as $2,000 down in here. Right now, that's a long ways away. That's still 90% down from where we're at right now. So hard to even say anything like that is reasonable when we haven't seen any type of buy volume profile show up or any type of bounces. And usually things like that you would think would take years to play out. We saw Netflix, it didn't. We saw Ethereum, it did take over a year for something like that to play out. But Netflix did it relatively quickly. The optimistic things over here in the market still are that, you can look at the altcoin market and say, hey, yeah, it's below the wicks. It's still up here. We could put it on the weekly time frame and throw on moving averages. You can say, hey, look, even the altcoin market, it's still above its 200-week moving average. The bigger problem for Bitcoin is that it's getting pretty deep below it. So you can go back to 2014 and you could see that it did dip quite a ways below it, but it did recover it by the end of the week. However, not in 2018. So if we get a weekly candle close in here for Bitcoin, I've tried to kind of paint this image of, if you go that 85% distance for Bitcoin, what happens in here is that these moving averages start kind of rolling over and rolling over and rolling over. And then suddenly, if Bitcoin's price action is hanging out underneath here, underneath all these moving averages down in here, we will have never seen anything like that before in the history of Bitcoin. So it creates a situation that's pretty hard to make a long-term bullish case for Bitcoin in particular. Now, the interesting thing that still continues to play out in here, even though Bitcoin and Ethereum have been two of the worst performers during this move, is that the Bitcoin and Ethereum dominance continues to move down to the lows. And so this is calculating it over here on TradingView. If we go over here onto CoinTrader Pro, the one that I like to use a lot, you have to excuse all of these API wicks in here that end up happening in here. It's not as clean as trading view, but we could see how deep this Bitcoin and Ethereum dominance is. And we've pointed into it that the time period that we've been in here was just like the time period back in here, and that we even paused out in the exact same level in here. We've talked about the structure, how the structure is typically a breakdown structure. It's not a breakout to the upside structure. But as we're getting down to these lows still, we're still seeing the same thing happening in this market, that Bitcoin is falling, Ethereum is falling. The rest of the market is falling too, but Bitcoin and Ethereum are falling more rapidly. And that could be reflected on this chart. Throughout all of history, every time that we've had these big falls where new lows get taken out in here, these were actually big runs in the altcoin market where the altcoin market was outperforming Bitcoin and outperforming Ethereum. But the nuance with looking at it like that is saying, okay, if it breaks down, does it have to do the same thing? Well, it has every time before, but the also technical definition of that is that it just means that Bitcoin and Ethereum are performing worse than the rest of the altcoin market. So that question is still yet to be answered on what happens here if this thing continues to plunge or if it pauses out and the market finds some type of a bottom in here. And then this thing continues to plunge while the market also reverses. But there's clearly some underlying thing happening here in the market where Bitcoin and Ethereum are the ones that are performing the worst collectively versus the remainder of the altcoin market. You're going to still have some altcoins that are performing worse than it, but for the most part, it's Bitcoin and Ethereum taking the blunt hit of this. And yet it still continues to follow. So after Bitcoin followed this whole time period in here for 6 months identically, we can see how we're doing in here. We can see we're still falling. We'll see if this thing continues. There's not a whole lot of information printed on this chart outside of it's just a crashing price right now for Bitcoin until we start seeing some type of bullish divergences show up, some type of volume profile showing up, and some type of supportive levels coming up. For me personally, I just have to continue. This is what the future is. This is what it's going to keep doing for a while until things start changing on the charts. And right now, there's just no buy volume profile. There's no bullish divergence. And Bitcoin just keeps heading in a straight line down. And while at the same time, both Bitcoin and Ethereum are losing dominance in the market, taking the blunt of the hit for both of them. So, quick weekend update, quick check-in as Bitcoin has now gone below its all-time high over here. Again, if Bitcoin wants to pull off some type of miraculous recovery in here, it would need to get itself back above 22,400 to close the week out above the 200-week moving average. So there's still 1 day and 12 hours until that happens. But again, need to be seeing some buy volume showing up in here. And we just haven't seen it yet. We've been seeing more things about more contagion spreading after the Luna and Terra fallout, then the Celsius fallout, then the Three Arrows Capital fallout. Is there more to come? It just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. So no signs of buyers yet. As you guys know, I've been bearish on Bitcoin since the top and screaming about it and screaming about Ethereum's top coming in as well from November last year. But obviously, I never in my life imagined it would move down this quickly. It's definitely caught me by surprise on how fast all of this has played out. We're definitely reaching down to all the price levels I thought we would reach down to for Bitcoin and for Ethereum in the long term, but it absolutely has come super fast as both Bitcoin and Ethereum were able to reach out to these 4.236 extensions on their market caps. And that, wow, they have come down very quickly. And we can even look through Ethereum's previous price history behavior before to never see that you have 11 weeks in a row. It's unprecedented on how fast this has actually ended up happening. And so you start kind of begging the questions, okay, one, are we going into a completely collapsing crypto market? Is Ethereum completely collapsing? Or is this all happening so fast and so aggressive that it'll aggressively reverse back to the other side? I don't know. But right now, the thing that we have is just collapsing and no buy volume yet. And I'm not going to be able to pick out the bottom on where the exact bottom is going to be. I can point to areas of interest in here, but it's likely going to be one of those things that it's going to reverse, hopefully. And then after it's reversed, you'll be like, oh, hey, yeah, that was the bottom. Be like, okay, Captain Hindsight, good job. But we'll see how things go throughout the rest of the weekend. Looking over here at Bitcoin, seeing where it's at from like a weekly close perspective, you can see this was just kind of a wide open gap. That was the problem here with the 200-week moving average over here. We had no support coming in over here. We had no support coming over here. There was nothing showing that outside of just placing a moving average there and saying, because time has caught up and it's been 200 weeks and this is the average for 200 weeks, that's why it needs to hold. We'd pointed back to the past that when this has been a supportive, it was also a resistance that was flipped to a support and still remained a support in here. We could see where we're at right now from a weekly perspective, back near the all-time high. This is also where it had to battle through in here. And well, it's still kind of in that area right now, but I'm not placing my marbles on it too much right now for Bitcoin. And again, those things that I'm looking for, like bullish divergences and for buy volume to show up in here. We haven't seen either of those things make themselves present. So into a crazy weekend we go. All right, guys, that's going to be it. I've got to make this thing really quick before my wife gets back home. I hope that you guys are doing okay out there. We could see what's going on with Bitcoin in regards to taking out the all-time high. No signs of reversals coming in there at all yet. So hopefully Mr. Barry Silbert and his digital currency group in Grayscale see something more than just max pain and uncertainty to get them to start buying Bitcoin, and that a support can come in at some point. So, all right, guys, that'll be it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.